And I remember him saying like, yo, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you got lube? And I was like, no.
So I've been thinking, I reference my past a lot, but I really want to invite you guys into that time period. So let's relive my experiences together as a gay black boy becoming a black gay man. In my own words, of course.
What's up, family? So as always, watch the previous episode before you watch this one, just so you can be caught up. But let's get into it.
Hey, real quick trigger warning. We're going to talk about some gay shit and some trauma. We're going to laugh, we're going to learn, we're going to do the things, but we're also going to talk about some gay shit and some trauma. I got to keep it real with you. Well, not always both. Well, maybe gay shit or trauma. It could be both, it could not be both. You get what I'm trying to say? Either way, we're going to talk about some gay shit and or some trauma. So prepare yourselves.
So at this point, it is the summer after my freshman year of college. You guys heard in episode 6 how that went, so I don't need to reiterate. But yes, we're in the summer. So during the summer, I went back to work. Oh, I don't think I told you guys where I worked. So I worked at Abercrombie & Fitch. For a little context about working at Abercrombie & Fitch, there was in-store models and there were, what do they call it in the back? Oh, man, it's going to bug me. Hold on. I got to figure this out. Hold on. No, not brand rep. I don't even know what it's called. So I can't remember what it's called, and that quick Google search did absolutely nothing. There were people who worked in the front, people who you saw, essentially. Those were called in-store models. And people who worked in the back who folded clothes and brought them out. And I can't remember what they were called. Comment below if you remember what they're called. With being an in-store model, it's tricky because they kind of make you feel like you are the finest thing in the world. It is also contingent upon where they put you. They put you in women's one, which is the very front. And if they want to book you to be a shirtless greeter, where you're wearing the latest jeans and they come and take pictures with you, it was a whole thing at Abercrombie & Fitch back in the day. So with feeling super attractive at work, coupled with my sexual frustration, it was going to happen this summer. I was going to finally have sex with a guy. It was unavoidable. It was happening. And at this point, freshman year had kind of sharpened my gaydar a little bit, but it didn't teach me how to go about talking to the guy. And I also had no understanding of apps. I didn't know what an app was. So I really didn't know app culture and how to, finesse and the whole send a picture of somebody else before you guys meet. I didn't know all that stuff, right? So at the time, I took the train to work sometimes. And there was this guy who worked in the mall as well. He didn't work at Abercrombie & Fitch, but he worked in the mall. So one day on my lunch break, I went to go to the food court. He was in there. And I was like, what's up, man? Woo woo. And he said, what's up, man? And we ended up talking, right? And somehow exchanging numbers. And I want to say I clocked him, but I'm not sure if I clocked him initially or if I clocked him in the onset of him clocking me. You know what I mean? It's usually like somebody clocks somebody or you guys clock each other. Either way, there's some clocking happening. So we exchanged information and he's texting me throughout work, right? And for some reason, we were getting off at the same time and we both rode the train. So I was like, okay, instead of going to your stop, you can just come to my crib. One thing about my crib, it was gonna have my first sex experiences. Sorry, crib. He comes to my stop with me. He comes to my crib. And at this point, I'm kind of understanding what's about to happen. I don't really know the logistics though, because again, I have no concept of top, bottom, reverse. I have no concept of, really no real concept of sexual health. I just know that I want to have sex with the guy. So we get to my crib. I wanna say we're talking back and forth. And in my mind, I was so bursting with the desire that in my head, it was like, just take your clothes off. Hey, like just take your clothes off and that's what's gonna set the tone. You already have a good understanding that he's, with it. Let's cut to the chase. So I remember us being in my living room. My parents were gone for the day, I wanna say, or for the weekend maybe even. And my siblings were off in college. They didn't come home for summers usually. So at this point, we're both naked in my living room.
Hey, real quick, I hope you're enjoying the video, but can you subscribe? Thanks.
And again, my only concept of sexual health is condoms. I don't really know anything else, especially about same gender sex. I didn't know anything about it, right? So I am about to, put it in, like, it's game time. And I remember him saying like, yo, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you got lube? And I was like, no. He said, do you have lotion? And I was like, yeah. So I went and grabbed some Jergens lotion and he, kind of, put it in himself, whatever. I put it on me, and then we had my first sexual experience. He, painted me, and I know what painting is. At the time, I didn't. And this is the part that I really want to highlight just because I think it's a lot of, what's the word? Discomfort, bullying, insensitivity around sex with a guy. Especially in like the closeted world, a lot of guys thought it was gay to clean out, And so I didn't know that guys didn't do that for a decent amount of time because most guys did. You know what I mean? Most guys would paint you because in their mind, it was gay. In my mind, it's a butt. It just made sense to me. So in the midst of that, we had my first sexual experience. It was sufficient for what it was. You know what I mean? It wasn't a love affair. It wasn't super romantic. I didn't have any expectations of him. It wasn't a thing. You know what I'm saying? But I think the tough part about closeted encounters is that the stakes are still high. So you guys kind of confuse yourself into assuming that it has to be more than what it is just because now we both have each other's biggest secrets. And that's just how it went back then. You know, it was this, even if it wasn't in the sky, you made it this energy because, again, you have my secret. But for me, it was just not a thing. It was just like, hey, bro, like, you know, that's just not what this is, you know? And I think on an honest day, it probably wasn't for him either, but I think a little piece of him felt like he needed to lay it on a little thicker just because, again, I have a secret. That whole make sure that both parties are comfortable, make sure you have a good, you know, perception of the person, because if not, it could result in your secret being told, what have you. However, this is when I got the most uncomfortable because now I've acted on this attraction. Now I am, in my mind, scarlet lettered, if you will, if you guys remember that book. I felt like everybody could see it now. Kind of similar to how I felt after having sex with a woman, that I had this very, this bigness about me. I had this very pulled up energy. And I think from having sex with a guy, I had a very uncomfortable reality that people could possibly see me, but in a different way. And this is when I learned how to play the DL game. So I noticed he was very invested in my comfortability. It almost felt like he could manipulate me a little bit, you know, because he knew that he was my first experience. Felt like he thought he had me. And on top of him acting like, you know, he had me in that way, I felt like he was in some way protecting me. Like he almost saw himself in me. Like he saw the version of him that just had his first experience and was going through the discomfort and the shame and all that stuff. So I put in my mind at the time that I was gonna tell everybody from that point on that they were my first experience, and that was gonna keep me safe. In my mind, it was, if you think you're my first sexual experience, then you'll handle me as if I'm some little kid, I'm new here, and you may be more likely to, even if you want to, or even if you at some point come out, or if you have this whatever experience of self, you will keep my secret somewhere close to cuff because it will remind you of how you felt during your time. And even thinking about this in real time has me like, wow, I was really in this make-believe world trying to figure out any avenue I could to ensure that present DL me, future DL me, all the versions of DL me was gonna be in that closet, and the keys were gonna belong to me at all times. Like, but hey, we tell our stories so that others don't have to relive them. So I met the other guy maybe like 2 weeks later, because I think in my mind it was, okay, I had my first sexual experience, but I'm curious if that's what it gives. Like, is that what it is, or was that just what that was? So I needed one more at least to show, okay, that's how it goes, or that was actually not what it is. This is more what it is, you know? So I meet this guy at a casting, and he was forward, but he was sneaky. And of course, sneaky as an adult is a red flag, but sneaky as a DL person is kind of a plus. You know, I kind of needed you to have a little bit of that sneaky, that hiding energy, that secretive, that kind of weird energy. Like, you kind of needed it, to be honest, which is so whatever in hindsight, but at the time it's what I needed, you know? And so I meet this guy, and I remember he worked at Quick Trip, and had the experience, and it was totally different than my first experience. He seemed more seasoned. You know what I'm saying? He seemed to know more about what he had going on. He was also a little bit older than the first one. Like, he just knew a little bit more. But I will say, although the experiences were different, what I noticed was the same was the way in which he handled me, knowing that it was my first time. And that was what solidified that I was gonna tell that story as long as I was closeted. You know what I'm saying? As long as I was hiding, I was gonna do the whole, this is my first time, I never done this before. Like, you know what I'm saying? Woo, woo, woo. I was gonna be the novice, boyish guy. That was my energy. And that was that. And I think what was interesting about this time was, this is when I was just a liar. And I'm not innately a liar. Like, I mean, we all tell lies, but I'm not a person who's just gonna make something up. At the time, I was a person who would deny or I would avoid, but I wasn't just an outright liar. But now, at this point in my life, I'm a liar. You know what I mean? I have become a person who is not just manipulating the truth or omitting the truth or, portraying something that may or may not be true. I am lying, And it was uncomfortable. The only solace I made was that it was casual. There wasn't any true any promises made. The interaction was honest in the sense of it wasn't any expectations. There wasn't any I love you share. There wasn't any hope for relationships, that kind of thing. But at the same time, this was not my first experience. You feel me? So at this point, I'm a liar. And I know it sounds crazy because if I'm saying I'm DL, then you already would consider me a liar. But there's something nuanced about being DL and being an outright liar. There's a lot of guys who think they're being themselves who are closeted. And again, this part, I think I say this often, but it just was not an option. And I think until you're probably in that scenario, it's gonna be really, really difficult to understand, but it just wasn't an option. It wasn't an option so much so that you don't necessarily feel like you are lying. You feel like you are not interacting with a part of you that you cannot be. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't so much like I am, lying about my sexuality as much as it's like that part is off limits and then any other lies will make me a liar. But that part, nobody would blame me. It's to be in the darkness anyway. It's nobody's business. It's how it goes. It's go over there. That doesn't count. And also the other nuance or caveat to that is any lie I tell to protect that also doesn't feel like so much of a lie. But for me, it did. That was basically summer. I had my experiences. I learned how to be more manipulative in my sexuality. And I went back to college, right? And college was more of the same, right? I felt like summers was my time for guys and school was my time to deal with girls. And at this point, I'm confusing myself into thinking that I could be bi. Not that I'm naturally bi per se, but that I have the capability to be a bi man, And I also dated 2 girls that were bi. So in my mind, I'm thinking there may be an avenue to be this bi person. And this is the part that I think was really interesting for me in my mind. I did not romanticize guys. Like, I didn't see guys outside of a sexual and or friendly capacity. Like, no part of me saw guys, romantically, like wanting to hug, wanting to like spend days on end together, desiring, relationship. It just, I don't know. It was really hard for me to even placate that. It just wasn't a thing. But I could see that with women. And I think a lot of that was more so society. I think it was just easier for me to romanticize women because of TV. When you turn on the TV and turn on the rom-com, turn on the thing, you're seeing women being romanticized. And at the time, I had never seen 2 guys romanticizing each other. Even you think about porn, I saw 2 guys having sex. I never saw 2 guys endearing and loving and caring. It just wasn't the energy. So I toyed with the idea that maybe I'm not gay. Maybe I just like to have sex with guys. That's how I thought in my brain. Like, maybe I am. Maybe that's just how I'm wired. I don't freaking know. And then you learn words like homo-romantic and hetero-romantic. You learn all these different terms as you get older and get more immersed in understanding yourself and your sexuality. But at the time, I didn't know any of that stuff. I'm just like confused and trying different things out, right? And then casualties along the way, of course, are other people. But in my mind, I'm just trying to figure myself out. And all of it went to a head my junior year of college. I meet this guy who ended up being my first boyfriend. And that was the first time that I liked somebody. That was my first time being like, I actually like you. I want you. Like, I want us. I want to do the things. And of course, I led with my same story. I led with, you're my first, the things. And I think he really leaned into that. That was a thing that he enjoyed, right? Like, oh, it's my first time. And, I'm his first anything and the things. And I didn't expect to like him. I expected it to be sexual. I didn't expect to like him. I expected to just it to be the song and dance that I had played before. Liking him changed the trajectory of my life. And we're going to need another episode to talk about it. I will stop here and we'll talk about that in the next episode. Question. You guys know I have to leave you guys with a question. What do you need to forgive yourself for? I feel like a lot of us have done things and or been things that we are not proud of. And maybe we can use this moment to be kind to our younger selves and give them the hug that they need, the grace that they need. And I think forgiving ourselves for some of the things that we did to protect that version of us could be helpful. So drop it in the comments and also add whatever kindness you need for yourself, because we're always being kind to ourselves, even our previous versions. And I will see you guys in the next episode. You know the motto, keep creating space.